Welcome to Breaking Financial Chains, where we combine practical money guidance with emotional healing to help you break free from financial limitations. I'm Tanya Ibberson, your financial wingwoman.
Hi there, and welcome to another episode of Breaking Financial Chains, the podcast. Today is a very special episode because I am joined by the one and only Dan Meredith, who's come to chat to me. I've never had any guests on the podcast before. So Dan, thanks so much for coming and having a chat with me.
A pleasure. Absolute pleasure. And just as well, it's the one and only. I think one Dan is enough for this planet. just the one. One is fine.
Amazing. Well, we'll jump straight in. So the purpose for having you on here, I've been asked by several people that have listened to some of the podcast episodes so far, and they asked me about why I talk about working with women. Why is it that you just talk to women, and potentially is this about man bashing? Have we got any of that going on, and could that potentially turn any listeners off? So that was one of the main reasons that I wanted you to come on here to help dispel some of that, because the purpose of what we want to chat about is around financial power, financial privilege and unconscious behaviours, showing listeners that not all conversations about financial control are man bashing.
Yeah, and I will also add to that, having known you personally for a little while, and known your situations and the things you've gone through, you have been nothing but positive about men to me, and also we have worked together. I am a man, and we have had nothing but a fucking great time together. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on this one, but we've started, so that's how it's going to carry on.
Do you know what? I think one of the first episodes, the podcast was noted as clean, and I got a few screenshots from people saying, I'm really disappointed, I can't possibly listen. So it's about time that we put that straight. So thanks for that.
But yeah, no, I'm a big believer in what you do, and having had I've got a really weird demographic with my clients. I've either got really kind of like hyper masculine men who've built businesses. They've often had like a trade or a skill, and they've built it up into these big empires, or sort of single mums and divorcees and stuff like that who are like kind of like, fuck you, I'm going to build this. They've gone through all manner of shit. And then they're like, right, how do we do this, Dan? So it couldn't be any more different. And I absolutely love working with women, and especially those, and this sounds really wrong, but just bear with me till I get to the other side where hopefully the good part comes out, who've been through some shit or some trauma. I don't want that to happen to anyone, obviously, but to be able to support them and get through the other side and help them build something on their own and give them that support and actually help them build something that can give them the life they want without having to rely on someone else is, empowering is not a word I tend to use as a man, but it just makes me feel really fucking good.
And I think that's the awesome part. That's what I love about working with you. We can have some really honest personal conversations at the same time as get the arse kicking that I need to get things moving. So I think it's really good balance that you offer in the work that you do. So just to kick things off then, why do you think we're so scared to have honest conversations about things like money and power?
I mean, do you know what? I'll definitely say, as a Brit, and I presume sort of a chunk of your audience is going to be British as well, it's just not something we were brought up talking about. You don't talk about money. Absolutely. Even in the corporate world, still, it's not the done thing to talk about, what salary you're on or what you earn. It's very, I've noticed in the UK, people are happy for you to do better. They want you to do well to a point. And then it's almost like, need to kind of be a little bit more understated. And, if you have done very well and you have, nice home, nice car, nice things, it can be seen as a bit ostentatious, and you get a very much tall poppy syndrome here. I think there's a lot of conditioning. We've been brought up not to talk about those things. And also, when you said, that's the money side of things and the power side of things, like, there's a lot of negative connotations with power, but it's like anything. It's like people, if you give someone £100 million, okay, if they're a really fucking good human being, they'll probably buy some nice stuff, but they're probably going to do more good with it. If you give it to someone who's a complete arsehole and a horrible human being, they're probably going to do some bad things. And it's the same with power. Like, if you're a good person, I don't think I'm not perfect by it, but I've got some influence and power in the worlds that I'm in and the spheres where I operate on a work. I try and leverage that for good. And I think but a lot of people associate power with being bad, because unfortunately people do exert their power and their control over others. And it's just, honestly, I've never liked bullies. I've never liked people who do that. And, I quite like bullying bullies, if I'm honest with you. I don't agree with it in the slightest. It's like, it's just not cool. You shouldn't, controlling people and making people feel less than and robbing someone of their sovereignty and their power, I think is just not a fucking good thing to do. And I just don't like it. And anything that allows you to get, a bit Tony Robbins here, but to reclaim or get your power back is a good thing.
Yeah. Oh no, 100%. I couldn't agree more. So you mentioned about the balance between you work with both men and women. Mm-hmm. Have you noticed differences in how men and women approach things like financial decision making and confidence and control in that respect?
Yeah, I'd say the guys I've worked with so it's quite interesting how it works. So the guys that I've worked with are generally quite masculine, very confident. They're very happy making big decisions and taking bigger risks. And again, this is just me giving my experience anecdotally, having coached for mentor people for over a decade. They're more risk taking, they're willing to take bigger punts and stuff. But those guys have actually found, because it's quite nice actually, they found that some of the personal stuff, the things they don't talk to people about, the mindset side of things, that's what they end up talking to me about, because they feel safe and comfortable to do so, because they see me as like a one of them, like I'm a bloke. Okay, but with my female clients over the years, there's generally a lot more consideration, especially if there's like family members and children and stuff involved. There's this balancing act between sacrificing time, raising a family, looking after the kids, being able to support loved ones, parents, that sort of thing, and carving out time for themselves. And with a lot of the women that I've worked with, some of the key things I have to do is actually start getting them to put themselves even in the top fucking third of the list of priorities. They rank so far down, and I'm like, well, that old phrase, you can't pour from an empty cup. And a lot of the things I try and get my female clients to do is to actually start putting themselves first. I mean, not at the expense of their kids or people that are relying on them or stuff, but you fully deserve to be healthy, to go to the gym, to have hobbies, to go see your friends, to do stuff. Like, you're a human being. You're not a label. You're not a mum or a wife or a partner. You're a human. You're allowed these things, and you should have these things in your life. It's what makes life worth living. But I definitely would say there's a lot more consideration of others. There is less risk taking overall. I'm not saying women don't take risks, but there's just less. Okay. Also, I think, and this is something that, again, only I can say from my experience as a man, and having grown up in the time, pre-internet and all this kind of stuff, if there was somebody I wanted to date or talk to, I had to go up to them. I had to get often their house phone number. And obviously, think back to my teenage years, you're ringing a house phone. Who answers the phone? Always the dad. So always these fun things. So I think as a guy, I got used to rejection from quite a young age, so it allowed me to kind of put myself out there easier. And again, gross generalizations, I'm oversimplifying things for the sake of the podcast, I think, sure, because maybe necessarily a lot of my female clients haven't had that level of sort of conditioning that as guys we get, if we're in the dating and mating market. It's it's different. It's not it's a very masculine energy to go out there. And I think a lot of my female clients have had to operate out of the masculine so long, like they have to do everything. It's always doing rather than being. It's sort of doing energy, and it tends to work quite well because, and again, this is just what I have been told. I'm not trying to blow my own trumpet in any way, shape or form. Can't reach for that matter. Every guy's tried, but sorry, you knew it was going to go off on some weird points.
I knew it was coming at some point.
It's like, that's what she said. But it's understanding that, I kind of give a lot of my clients, for want of a better phrase, almost permission to be more, operate more from a feminine energy, because I will handle some of that masculine energy kind of stuff. Or if they're really feminine, I will bring some into their life. And it's like, that's great that you're, manifesting and that you are believing, you're doing all this wonderful stuff, but I'm like, we got to do some shit. And like, that's my thing. I try and get people just to do balance. Some things, and it's trying to find a balance for everyone, and everyone's unique, everyone's different. But that was a very long-winded way of answering that question.
It was super interesting though, because the emphasis from the split that you talked about it, you were saying about how you talk to the men and they've come from a very masculine and a doing. And the first thing you said when dealing with your female clients is they're quite often in a caring position. They've got kids, they've got other considerations, and that can quite often get in the way. I know that we've had that conversation before around balancing everything out, but it doesn't seem to be an issue that men either. I'm not saying they don't consider it, but it doesn't seem to be something that factors into those sorts of decisions when they're running a business. Is that something that you would say is a fair assessment?
You know, yeah, it's a fair assessment, but I've got male clients / friends who run businesses who are like separated from their children, and it's different. And I mean, again, this is just
that is different.
Generalization.
Sure.
It's often, or more often, the case if there's children involved, for example, it's more often that they're with the woman, more often than not. Just it's generally more often, okay? You know, and it's kind of like, you know, a lot of my friends who have like divorced or separated, they see the kids, you know, weekends or every other weekends, or so they have less time with them. So do men potentially have more time to work on the business? Yes, but this is something that I've had to say to my sort of female friends, is like, my male friends who have children miss their kids desperately. So
what they may have time, actually.
What they may have in time to build a business, they're missing out on time with their loved ones. And I know my friends FaceTime their kids every day, they get out of the way. And that's the ones with good, you know, a good co-parenting. If it's, you know, a little toxic, or there's a little bit of, you know, badness in there, or there's a little bit of beef between the other, it's incredibly hard work for both parties. And the thing is, we all have problems to deal with. It's just we've all got a different perspective. So what the lady may have to deal with, and I've got some wonderful clients, like amazing clients who have children, and I have so much fucking like, part of the reason I love working with sort of single mums or women who are very sort of independent in that space is because there's no fucking about. They've got school runs to do. There's things that need to be done. There's classes that need to be put. They have to be regimented, and they are very often very good at being disciplined, because there's only so much time in the day. They've often only got these short windows of time. So for me as a coach, it's as long as we can carve out time for them as well as the work stuff we need to. It's great, because I often know it just gets done because there's no other alternative. That's it. But also that puts a huge amount of pressure on the ladies, because there's such a finite amount of time, and ultimately you are having to keep a small human alive and develop them and help them become, you know, a good human in their own right. It's a constant pressure, and you have that if, you know, the little ones are living with you all the time. On the male side of things, they obviously have that day-to-day, you know, interaction, but they're obviously missing their kids, you know, again, like either party, but as long as they, you know, are good parents, they miss their kids
different
dearly.
Circumstances.
It is.
Yeah.
And what I try and do with everyone, something I've always, I mean, my mum is a very empathetic person. I always try and see both sides of the equation. So if someone's complaining about X, I'm always trying to consider the opposite side as well. Like, why might that be a problem? What's it from their perspective as well? So empathy is your friend in this one. Yeah,
for sure. So let's talk about financial privilege then. It's a big word, it's a big phrase, and it can make people defensive. But privilege isn't about guilt. The emphasis that I want to come at this on this podcast is very much from a place of awareness. In your world, do you see that, and how would you help people see that without shutting down?
Do you know what would be really useful? Because I remember when you were talking to me about coming on the show, there's a few phrases that I didn't understand. So would you mind taking a moment for maybe some people, like I did when I first heard this? I'm very aware of my privileges in life, okay? Whether that be my gender, my race, my education, my family, whatever that may be, okay? But what does financial privilege mean? Just for those who are listening who maybe don't understand that, like I didn't when I first heard it.
Sure. So what I'm talking about from the perspective of financial privilege is access. It's having something that comes in that you get full choice of, right? Where does this now go? What are we going to do as an individual? What are we going to do as a family? What are we going to do as a unit with the financial resources that we have access to. So when I talk about privilege, it's very much the pushing the button, who gets to decide, who makes those choices. So
yeah,
does that answer the question?
Yes, it does. Good. It's just, I thought it was just handy, because when I first heard that term,
you're quite right.
What could that mean? Because that is like, is that coming from wealth? Is that being good with money? Is that understanding numbers? Like, what is it? But it's not any of that at all, because that was the first things that I thought of when I heard of it. If you are the one in charge of the money, it's fucking massive privilege, because you get to dictate where that money goes, what it's spent on, what it's done with this. Now, I'm also incredibly mindful of the fact that as of recording this, I have just to give a little bit of context for those people listening, so there's always that it's easy for you voices, okay? So I have a special needs sister. I chose to go into business first so I could make sure that her future was secure and I could put some resources in place. My dad passed away in 2020, so I had to sort of double down just to making sure even more was done in place. So I made peace with the fact, so I have no children and no partner as of now, but these are things that I do want, and I am not aggressively seeking, but if the right person comes up, I would love to meet, and I would love to have a family. I've made peace with the fact that I will be an older dad.
A little lad there in the podcast.
Yeah, no, so but I'm saying this, so I have a privilege right now, so being able to have the business I have and the freedom I have is a privilege, because I didn't have any. You know, I had to look after my sister, but I said to mum and dad, I said, right, I can either help out with my time, but it's actually going to be better if I have all the time and I'll focus on building a business, building something that can generate wealth. That solves the problem. And yeah, I've had relationships in the middle of it as well, but as someone who has complete financial control over it, is incredibly easy for me. And I did,
you have full autonomy, don't you?
I do. And I think when we go into anything, especially if it's a partnership or a relationship, it's up to you. And obviously I was in a position where I was able to do this. I met someone, still a friend. It didn't pan out long term. We were together for a nice chunk of time. Lovely woman who had a little daughter, and she had a job that she wanted to part ways with. We were together, and I was able to support her, and I willingly chose to do so. That was something that I wanted to do, and I made it incredibly clear that that support was non-conditional. So whether or not we argued, if we, we're still humans, we didn't argue much, but humans do argue.
Yeah.
That would never not be something that I did. And I even said to her, and I honoured this, and I feel very lucky because she's ended up meeting someone wonderful now, and I'm really happy for her and her daughter, who I did get a very good bond with. And I sort of said, if we parted ways, there's 3 months worth of, the support that I was giving you, put to one side, and that will not happen. Even if you did the worst possible thing to me, I will still honour my word. And I remember, because she asked me to give it to her on a weekly basis, because she knew if she got a lump sum, she would spend it on nonsense. So this was her choice. So she asked me to do that every Monday after we parted ways. And it was a challenging breakup. I would start getting, for the first few weeks, slightly spicy messages. You better do this. And I'd set it up as a direct debit. So it was 12 o'clock, and like clockwork. And within about a month or so, she was like, you're actually going to keep your word, aren't you? It's like, yeah, I said you were, because it's not just for me. It's like, yes, obviously, would I rather have the money myself? Of course I fucking would. But I made a promise and I gave my word. You've got a mortgage to pay, a daughter to look after. You've got a job that you can literally pick up straight away again, like the career she wanted to leave was something she could pick up immediately. But I said, you're not going to be in a position where you're fucked. And we agreed that was a fair thing. That was my choice. Everyone is different. Like, for me, I would never want to put anyone in a situation where they were solely reliant on me, or without having some degree of savings or safety for them. So, because I want someone to be with me because they want to be with me, not because they feel like absolutely. They have to, or they've got nowhere else to go, or how am I going to pay the bills? So I'm very, very aware of that. And in the world I'm in, I tend to only, it's like the internet is like my office, because obviously a lot of my businesses are online. So I tend to meet people from the online world, and for me, meeting other entrepreneurs and business owners, that's where I tend to meet people that I've dated.
That's where you hang out. Yeah.
Yeah, that's my office, where you used to meet people back in the day. And, you know, I couldn't think of anything worse than someone being completely reliant. And I know people that are, and this is it, I'm fully aware of that. So yeah, very privileged in that way that I have control of the money, but I would never, as a man, and that's all I can give on this perspective is my own personal beliefs and upbringing.
Absolutely.
I would not want anyone in that situation. And if somebody did get reliant on me, I would do whatever I could to put in place that if they decided to go or it wasn't working, that they would not be harmed. And I had, you know, I'll give you a live case study. Had a car, partner at the time needed a car, sort of we made a deal. They'll pay off, basically pay, you know, the monthly payments and stuff. They would pay that off and they would have the car. I wanted a new car. I wanted a midlife crisis mobile, which I own and I fucking love. It is so unnecessary. Biggest wheels ever, and it's even got spotlights that I don't know how to turn on. That person still has that car. They are still making the payments. I have not gone back on my word. You know, if they stop making the payments, I'm going to take the car back, which I think is fair. But, you know, I'm not going to deprive someone of a mode of transport. They've made the payments faithfully. That's okay. You know, you just don't need to be a dick about things.
No, and I think that's the important thing. It's about treating it as a transaction or a commodity, which is essentially what money is. You know, you have an agreement. I'm not going to weaponize it. I'm not going to hold it over you. And one of the key messages that I talk about is that every woman should have the means and mindset to be able to leave. And it's super honourable that you've had those arrangements. And it may well be that some people don't have the means to be able to offer that.
And I'm very aware that I can. And that's something, again, there's nothing good. I'm aware of that privilege. But, you know, if I was just, equally, I ain't giving people free fucking cars. Like, you know, they're paying it off. It's going to be theirs at the end of it. It's absolutely fine. It makes no difference whatsoever. But, you know, I just think how would I like to be treated if it was that situation? And ultimately, you know, it's just no need to be an asshole. Like, people do dumb shit, okay? People just do. Relationships end. Stuff doesn't go to plan. But fuck me, there's just no need to treat people badly. Yeah. But I am in agreement with you.
Ego gets in the way.
I think as well, and if you can, whether it's by building something on the side, having, you know, working some extra hours, doing something in investments, or so, I don't know. I mean, this is your expertise, Tanya, so I'm not even going to remotely dip my toe into it. But I do think it's like, I always think in this situation, it's like in a relationship, it's like, every day you sort of choose to be with that person. It's not a case of you have to be with that person.
Yeah, and, you've not got a knife behind your back.
Yeah, exactly. So I do think it is very important to have just, you know, a little safety net or a nest egg or something that should things not go to plan, you do have that as a backup.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyone should have that. Male, female, or any gender should always have. And, you know, there's lots of different people who suggest it. And again, very mindful that this is not easy to do in today's economic climate. But if you can have 3 to 6 months worth of living expenses saved, and it might take you years to do, and you might have to maybe make some sacrifices. I had to when I started out. I don't come from money. I don't come from wealth at all. It's just hard work. But my first goal, and I didn't go out. I did not go out until I hit it, was to get 6 months in reserve of my bills. So if everything went to shit, I knew that I was safe. So that was a really, you know, that's something I still recommend people do, is aim for sort of, you know, 3 to 6 month goal to get that.
Yeah, and that's always, for me, that's always the longer term goal. But you're right, in today's climate, that's quite tricky to put in place if you're sitting here from a standing start and needing to get to that. But it is absolutely the ideal. Now, sometimes control doesn't look like control. Sometimes control looks like help. Do you think that some men mistake taking care of things, in inverted commas, for being supportive, either genuinely or otherwise, when actually what he's actually doing is disempowering their partner?
Okay, do you mean in a sort of day-to-day sense, or like kind of like, look, I'll cover this, I'll pay for that, I'll do...
Sure, you know, day-to-day, longer term, you know, it feeds into that expectation of what the role of the man should be. You know, if you've been brought up believing that you should fix problems and you should be the provider because that's what you saw in your parents' relationship, as an example, it might not necessarily be coming at it from a I can fix that. It might be a pressure on them as a man from a I have to do this shit. I have to get this together, and don't worry, I'll take care of that. What do you think that mistake is made?
I mistake. I don't know if that's the word I'm going to use, but I do know, because it's funny, because just as of recording this, I was recording another podcast prior, which is where I've got a couple of chaps and we talk about issues that men face, and none of us are like alpha male bro dickheads or, you know, super spiritual, you know, wet wipes or anything. We're just three guys, normal guys, different stages in life, different relationships, and we just literally talk about the issues men face. Now, we as men, or many men should I say, not all, we have a constant pressure. I know that I do, that I want to provide, I should be able to do these things. And I will say there have been times where I've not been able to, or business has taken a downturn, or, you know, lifed, and you know, I was kind of like, shit, am I able to do this? And I've been, I don't know if terrified is the right word, but I've been very reticent to tell my other half, not because I want to hide something, because I don't want her to see me as weak or incapable or less of a man. And unfortunately, and this again, all I can give is my male perspective. Every man I've ever chatted to, whenever they've gone through weaker, you know, dips, things haven't gone to plan, again, and it's not everyone, but everyone has one experience where that has been used against them. So that's our challenge as a men. It's happened. You know, you will have had things used against you as well. Everyone has the capacity to be a massive arsehole, okay? Always, okay? So you never know what any human's going to do. I don't think the men that do it willingly are doing it from a bad place. It's because they've, you know, have been brought up. It's how they want to be, and I think a lot of good men want to provide and want to support, but they don't understand that can lead to reliance on the other half, and obviously it's robbing them of being able to do things and support things. And something that I use in a coaching capacity is like, you know, it's the whole concept of asking for help. And I'll say to people, do you like helping people? Does it make you feel good? Yeah, it makes you feel awesome. So why the fuck don't you ask for help then? Why are you robbing someone else of that feeling of warmth and joy, and I've helped that person? Kind of the same thing. So I think, again, but it all boils down to communication. Like, if you don't talk about these things, and I will, I will not name any. I'm gonna have to write. I will mask this story brilliantly. I don't think they'll ever hear it, but it's all good. It's a positive story. I had a female friend whose chap, they were maybe 6 months into the relationship, and proper loved up, perfect. But he kept doing a couple of little things that were getting on her tits, and there was no malice in them, but he wasn't picking up on the subtle hints. And I will say this, and I'm not speaking for all men because I can't, but we don't do too well with subtle. Okay? And I said to her, I said, what you need to do is sit him down, okay, almost literally hold his face, literally hold it square in your face, look at me and say, I love you. I don't want this relationship, and I know this person well because it's the seeds. So what often happens is men often find themselves getting broken up with, and it feels out the blue, whereas actually it's started months and months
missed
before,
all those breadcrumbs.
But they've missed all of the little breadcrumbs. And I said, right, you need to hold him by his face, say, I love you, I don't want this to end, but these things, whatever those things were, are driving me round the bend. I don't know if you can stop them. I don't know if you know about this. There's nothing wrong, but I know if this keeps going, we are going to probably end up breaking up. And I really don't want to do that. And honestly, he was like, oh, okay. And it just stopped immediately because we didn't know. So again, if you are, listening to this, and again, I can only give my male experience, and I'm giving you some advice as a man. If you are feeling that, if you're feeling some type of way, if you're feeling that you aren't getting the control you need or the freedom you need, and you have a healthy relationship where you can, please sit us down, okay, and explain it to us, because we want, again, men, natural problem solvers. If there's a problem, we will want to fix it, but if we don't know what the problem is, we can't fix it. And then that's why I know so many blokes, every man I know, again, has had that, I don't know why it ended. I thought everything was fine.
Yeah.
But
Sure.
yet there's been all those, as you said, those breadcrumbs have been going for months and months, and we're just oblivious to them.
Yeah.
It's nothing personal. We just don't spot them.
I think for all of the examples that when I'm working with women from a coaching perspective, it generally boils down to a miscommunication. It generally boils down to I've said, that I've made this really clear. Well, have you made this clear that it pisses you off? It's like ordering a pizza but forgetting to actually place the order. So where's my pizza? But you've not actually asked for anything. You've not actually ordered anything. You sat there waiting for your pepperoni pizza and nothing arrives. That's the reason why.
Great phrase. I'm stealing that one.
But when you have that open communication, and sometimes it's as blatant as, right, once a week we're going to sit down and we're going to have a conversation about money, we're going to have a conversation about responsibilities, we're going to have or however you want to dress it up. I think particularly in longer term relationships that can get lost and forgotten. And well, if she's got a problem, I'm sure she'll say, or if he's got a problem, I'm sure he'll let me know. But it's those assumptions where things start to fall down. And my next question was going to be, from if there's a man listening right now sitting there thinking, I never meant to harm, but maybe I've been unaware, where can he start? If you've missed the breadcrumbs and you think things are going wrong, what would you suggest him doing to maybe start a conversation? Or
so if this is him, maybe he realised he's being a little bit controlling with the finances and that sort of thing. Is that the sort of context you mean here?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, there've been so many examples where I've spoken to people and the women have said, I spoke to my husband about it, and it was one particular one that really sticks in my mind, and he instantly burst into tears because he had no idea how it was building up for her, but because she hadn't voiced it, she didn't know how to, she didn't know how to start the conversation, because she knew he was coming at it from a place of help and being of service and thought he was doing the right thing. He was heartbroken because he didn't realise that she felt so caged and stuck and being controlled. So yeah, absolutely. If you think that might be something that's going on,
you've kind of covered it a little bit with your sort of the kind of regular sit down and open communications, and I think it's one of those things. If I've studied communication and psychology and persuasion and motivation and all this kind of stuff, as you do sort of business and marketing and coaching as well, is being able to take someone, I would say, take someone out of the situation, so not in the home. Change the location, first of all. So get out of the home, go somewhere, have a conversation as adults. You used to date, used to do things, make the environment nice. And literally, I would just say, is there anything I can help you with? Is there anything that you need? And just shut the fuck up and learn how to ask good, open questions. And also pick up, and obviously it's funny seeing as what I said, but you have to start picking up on subtle signs. If there is, if someone is looking tired or stressed or their energy is dipping, and again, I'm hoping I'm not going to be too base here, but if intimacy is waning, if there's less affection, if there's less kindness, if there's less whatever that there used to be, well, there's probably something wrong. And again, I'm only giving this from a male perspective, I've known this, I've done this myself. You'll ask someone, a lady, what's wrong? What's the matter? Nothing is a common one. Or my favourite one, you should know. You get that one every now and then. But we haven't picked up on the sort of thing. So it's being able to sort of ask a open question, saying, how can I support you? What can I do to help you more? Is there anything right now that you're struggling with that I'm not noticing, that I could maybe take some of that burden off you? Or is there anything you would like to put in place? And also, again, I think especially as we get older, and when you do get things like careers and kids and commitments, and as well, you got like family members that are getting older, and there's a lot changes as you get older. Okay, it's taking some time to ask that person, what it is they want from their life. Do they have any goals? Do they have any dreams? Is there anything they'd really like to do or to try? Just taking the time, especially in longer term relationships, with someone a long time. Like, we all fall into our little routines and habits and stuff, but your dreams shouldn't die. Like, as of recording, I'm 45 years old. I've still got loads of dreams and aspirations and goals and things. And, my person, wherever they are, I will find them eventually. they will have dreams and goals and aspirations, and I will hope they will be my biggest cheerleader and help me achieve mine, and I will do exactly the same in return. And yep, sometimes we're going to have to make a compromise, and sometimes one person's dream might have to take a backseat for a month or so might the other person's. But it is, taking the time to find out what people want from life, because unfortunately, doing what I do, is a lot of people I speak to, and they're not desperately unhappy or depressed, but they seem to have lost a little bit of joy and a little bit of the spark. And it's like, they say things to me that they wouldn't say to their other half. And I'm like, I'm glad you feel comfortable talking to me, but you kind of need to talk to, the other human being in your life, because he needs to know, or she needs to know this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the next question I was going to ask you was for the women listening, to get sort of like a male perspective on this, many of whom are high achieving, but still feel out of control financially. How can they begin with these conversations without shade or blame? But you pretty much answered that earlier on. It really does need that blunt look at me, holding the face. Yeah. I need to have a chat with you. I'm not looking for a big fight or an argument, but I do have boundaries and I want to share that with you. So from a male's point of view, how should a woman do that in those conversations?
Well, I mean, the thing is, the beautiful thing about relationships and dynamics, there is absolutely no right or wrong way. And when I say you can make it up, you can. But I do think, especially if you're a family unit, there should be like a pooled pot of resources. And if, let's just say, one is bringing in more than the other. So for me, this has always been something it's almost like we've kind of like, well, you earn this, I earn that. As a percentage relative, I have more, so I will be putting in more into this than the other. I've always felt for me that's fair. If someone's if I'm earning,
that's always what I recommended
month,
as
they're
well.
earning 1,000 a month. Well, as a percentage of overall, I'm doing so. That's, to me personally, that seems fair. But I will say, again, comes back to that conversational piece. I think, if you're a married family unit or whatever, you should have that combined pot. But I also think each person should have their own little pot of money as well. And just for the guys, they should have some money put aside if they want to spend it on something or do something. If they're, and I will say, I know men who have felt like this, that they are just a paycheck. They are just, all their use is to provide money and resources, and that's it. I know I've spoken to many men over the years of that. So we all have different feelings of ways of doing it. So I think, again, I think it's really important, and I'd say my friends who have some of the healthiest and best marriages and relationships and are just really good, they love each other, they have a great connection, they're good parents, they're very kind, but they've also got their own shit on the side as well. They've got their own hobbies, interests. They, I won't name names, but there's a couple that I'm thinking of right now. The lady just works slightly less. She's still, nearing the end of the commitment because the kids are in the sort of teens now. So, she would work the hours, in between the school hours, and the chap would work, longer. But they always carved out time to do their own hobbies. They put money aside separately for their own things, so they could just, if they want to just buy something or do something, there's never been any issues with that. And I've seen that as an incredibly healthy dynamic. But they don't get lost in the relationship or being a wife or a mum or a carer. They're a person. And I think it's not losing yourself as a person and understanding that your needs and your goals and your freedom and your happiness are completely fucking valid. Okay?
Yeah.
Completely valid, and not to let yourself get lost in that sort of mix.
I think it's really common, as you say, in longer term relationships where someone's perhaps got an idea of, I'm 10 years away from retirement now, or I don't plan to be working this crazy amount or doing this sort of thing 10 years from now. And the assumption that the other person will obviously want to do the same thing. I think it is about having those open conversations. And what are you dreaming? What is it that you plan to do? What is it that you really want to do? And allowing space. That it's okay to have that dream, rather than, but what do you mean you don't want to sit and hold my hand while the sun goes down? Every once in a while that's all right, but not every fucking night, for God's sake. You've
got your own life to live as well, and that's just something you need to remember. But again, and also there are some relationships, like, look, there are some people who just can't communicate, and it's not going to work. And you know what? hope it doesn't sound too harsh, but you do just need to get out of it. And obviously, you need that financial cushion, and you need that. And, I would say, the sooner you can just, as soon as you can just have something that gives you a little bit of a safety net, however small that may be. And again, sometimes you have to start small, even if you started, and again, for some people, £5 a day. Okay, I mean, that might be a lot to someone listening. I'm not being patronising, but, start. Okay, start putting some money aside. Start with some small investments, some bonds, some things that are going to give, steady returns. Just start putting things away. It doesn't mean you're building your war chest to end the relationship or the marriage or whatever.
No, I think that's super important. Yeah.
I have safety nets in my businesses. I've got, legitimately taken out of my business cash. I've got watches. I've got, savings accounts. I've got, there's never been a reason that I've ever needed it, but it's just in case. It just gives me a peace of mind. So if everything goes to shit, I'm okay, and I can get back on my feet again. I'm all right.
Sure, and that's smart. That's a smart thing to do financially. So moving away now from the serious, the money talk, I've got a few questions for you, if you wouldn't mind obliging me. So, what's something you used to believe about power or success that you now see differently?
So I would say this is quite a good one, actually. So when I grew up, the town I lived in had like an upper and a lower part. So the upper part
same for me.
was all the old kind of Victorian, Georgian houses, a lot of money. So that's basically where you lived if you had money. If you're in the lower part, it was the newer builds, it was the Barratt homes, it was the Wimpy homes again. And that was the new build part of the town. So literally it's split in two levels. And there was one school that served both. So you had people from the top, or we used to call it the top or the bottom. That's how I used to call it. And
ours was higher and lower.
Me and all my pals were from the bottom, because there was one big long fucking road, and we'd all knock on, and literally all 10 of us lived off that road.
Like
so
the Pied
we were the
Piper.
bottom. But then when we met people, when we went to big school, went to comprehensive school, we met some of the upper people, because we'd never met them before, and they lived, a short walk from the school, because the school happened to be on the higher level. And I used to think wealthy people, powerful people were assholes. When you don't come from money, or you don't see money, I had a very negative thought of people who had money. I just thought they were privileged, I thought they were stuck up. Yeah. I thought, I didn't hate them, because some of them became my friends, but I was like, it's all right for you. And you know what? Yeah. As I've got, there's people infinitely more success than me, but I do okay. And you know what? It's just, money's just an amplifier. I kind of mentioned this earlier. Like, it allows you to do more. It gives you time. It gives you freedom. It allows you to not do the things that you don't want to do. It also choices, allows you to help people. And that, for me, is something that's so money and power and success, if you are a good person at heart, most of the time, because none of us are fucking perfect, I actually think get as much as you can, because you can leverage it and use it for good. So that was a big shift, especially when I started spending more time around, I will still say those who've inherited money, not as in like from a passing, but generational wealth. I'm a bit like, when they start up a business, I'm like, yeah, all right, you're still diving your toe into a well, but I didn't get my dad didn't give me $1 million to fucking explore my little startup. All right, so there's a little bit of me that's like, yeah, not as much of a fan of those. So I don't think they're bad people, of course, but it's like, for me, I like people who've grafted and built something. I resonate with that. But basically, I used to think people with money were sort of stuck up their own arse, privileged, and you know what? Yeah, some are, but money, power, success can be used for good, and I do believe all of us should strive to get as much as we can ethically as we possibly can, because it just makes everything easier.
Sure, thanks for that. And has there ever been a moment where you've been talking to someone, whether you're online or in person, where you've thought, oh, that landed differently than I intended?
In what? Yeah, I mean, definitely. Can you give a little more context on that? Are we talking in a coaching? Go on, give me just a little bit more.
Well, no, I'm talking from an entertainment point of view, Dan. Have you got a funny story to share?
I mean, that's like us. I mean, every one of my fucking coaching calls, I always go off on something what's termed as a tangent. So I have said there are certain things that I say, and it's like the train has already left the fucking station, and I'm like, I have said some highly risque, inappropriate things that were not anything that have crossed any bad boundaries, but I've just said some stupid shit over the years. It makes me sound like I'm terrible at my job, but I get very animated and very excited. So I don't have one specific example for you, but I do remember saying to someone that they need to basically quit being a little moaning bitch and go and live their life a little bit more. And I'm not going to say the gender or anything else, but that then turned into them breaking up with, because they basically working hard, weren't happy, just a lot of unhappy. Every call was just complaining, which is fine. You can complain. I'm like, you've got money, you've got resources, like go have some fucking fun. That for them meant ending their relationship, going on a 2-day bender and then 3-day bender, and then flying off to Thailand. So that landed differently. I was more like, have a pizza tonight, maybe go out for a couple of beers with your friends. So they did. That was one that was taken to an extreme, but it was actually the best thing they could have done, because they weren't happy in their relationship. They were stifled. They needed a blowout, and then they were just like, I've got no reason to be here, and they just fucked off to Thailand, and they're still there to this day living their best life. So I guess it did land right, but it wasn't
it
what I was
worked out well.
Literally, I was suggest a couple of drinks and a beer, pizza. That was it. That was all I was really suggesting, just to have a bit of fun.
Change of the normal routine. Yeah. Not quite what you were expecting. Fair enough.
Yeah.
All right, and lastly then, when you hear the phrase breaking financial chains, what does that mean to you?
Oh, that's a very, very good question. Thing is, finance, knowing as someone who I'm not naturally good at finance. I used to have a lot of fear. Never wanted to get in trouble. I think mum and dad did a very good job. You know, I love them as parents, but I always wanted to pay my way. I never wanted to get in trouble with money, you know, owe people, you know, fuck up my tax bills. You know, I just never wanted to be in trouble. Okay. And I would say for me, it is just knowing that you are free and that you are able to do things without worry and fear when it comes to money. I'd say that for me is that whatever that may be, I mean, that's my perspective.
Sure, yeah.
Money is simply, it's a tool, it's a resource, okay? And I think, and I will say this, I have been in a position where I've had, when I say nothing, like virtually nothing, as in I had £22 to my name for 6 weeks. That was a very scary period where I couldn't afford my rent, I couldn't afford anything, couldn't afford to eat. I was stealing sandwiches out of bins behind a popular sandwich chain when I knew they were closing up. You know, I will say this, to break financial chains is to have money to be free and to be able to operate how I want. And it's something I think everyone should strive for. And it's not necessarily going to be quick or easy, but it is something you should find a way to be free from the chains of finance. And if you approach this, and I was given an exercise by a very, very successful gentleman, and it was simply a case of, and it was a simple one, and you had to fill it in. It was the first bit of the homework, and I was like, what is this? And you had to answer a question. She said, money is, and then just a line. I was like, and all of the, and mine was as well, but all of the responses, you know, money is freedom, money is stress, money is, you know, they were all emotive responses, where this was the best shift that the answer was, money is money. That's all it is. Money is money. It's not happiness. It's money is money, and it's a tool or a resource that you can use. And I will say, when I've had very little of that resource and an abundance of that resource, it is 100% easier. And I said this in my last book, which is called How to Be Fucking Happy. And I say this, and it's in the very closing chapter. If you don't have any money, go after the money. Money in itself will not make you happy, but having access to resources and freedom and time brings you a fuck ton more happiness and joy. So again, go after that money. Might take a while, might take a little bit of time, but I promise you, there's a version of you in the future that will be grateful that you started now.
Amazing. Thanks, Dan. So anybody
You're welcome.
wanting to go and find you, if they don't already know you, but let's face it, they probably already do, where is the best place for them to come and find you?
I'd probably say the most interactive place is either my Facebook profile, so just put in Dan Meredith into the search bar, and I think it's dan.meredith77 is the actual one, because it's my personal one, but you'll find my profile. Instagram is probably the easiest place. I love Instagram. It's at the real Dan Meredith. Give me a follow, drop me a DM. There's no one in my inboxes but me, so if you message Dan, you get Dan.
Amazing. Dan, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so
You're
much for
welcome.
coming and joining me.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for joining me today on Breaking Financial Chains. Remember, you have the power to transform your relationship with money one step at a time. If this episode helped you, please subscribe and leave a review to help others find their path to financial freedom. I'm Tanya, your financial wing woman, and I'll see you next week.